Hello guys, and welcome back to KF Plus LEGO Mastery. And in today's video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going over the few key things that you need to know when you're building a vacuum engine. So, let's get right into it without any further delay. So let's get right back into this video, and I want to thank you all for stopping by to watch my videos. I greatly appreciate the support, and if you get a chance, don't forget to leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe if you really want to see more of my content. So, what we're going to be doing in today's video is we're going to be we're going to be going over some of the key things that you should know when you're building a vacuum engine. So this is going to work like this. We're going to start from the front of the vacuum engine. We're going to work our way to the back where the carb is. So to start off, obviously, we have the flywheel. And that is basically one of the key things that you need to take into consideration when you're building a vacuum engine. Now, one thing that everyone needs to know about a vacuum engine's flying wheel is how big is it? How big do you need it to be? And that question is answered simply by what you're looking for with your engine. Now, a smaller and lighter flywheel like I have now is ideal for higher up RPMs, but again, not as much torque. So, if you want a handful more torque, but not as much RPM, you want to go for a bigger, heavier flywheel, which is easily changeable if you have different stacks here so that you can adjust it. And a second thing is, depending on the weight of your flywheel and how big it is, you're going to have to raise your engine up, unless you're hanging it over a table, in which case the flywheel will go right here, and there's no need to. But as you can see, I've raised the main engine up by about 4 layers, because the crankshaft sits at this red layer right here. So, another thing that you may need to take into consideration is the fact that you need to always be supporting your flywheel. Now, what that means is that having double brackets here to keep it in place. And this is especially ideal if you have a big, heavy flywheel, because the weight of it will actually sag down and sort of bend the crankshaft, which makes for lower RPMs and more friction. So overall, less performance. Now, what you can do is extend this axle outward long enough so that you can put a second bracket up here to hold up the axle. In this case, there will be no more forces that push down on here, and your engine will run very, very smooth. So yeah, that's the first thing that you need to take into consideration. Now let's move on to the next thing that you should think about when you're making your engine is one of the most important things, actually the most important thing, if not, well, yeah, it's the most important thing. Basically, you want to think about your piston. And what that means is you need to have, if you're looking for a high performance engine, you obviously want to go for a performance piston, like I have in here right now. And I will actually link a video right up there about piston comparisons and how performance pistons are better in every way. Performance is better, but this is how I explain how they're better and what they do better. So yeah, that's what you need to consider. And obviously, it has to have what you're looking for is most likely always in the piston, because of the fact that it's what pulls up and pushes down and keeps the engine moving. It is quite it is most definitely the most important thing when about the engine, and it can never be ignored. You really need to put time into it in order to make it um, functional and also high performance. That's obviously what you would do if you're looking for higher performance. And and moving right along with the piston, you'd also need a good cylinder wall. Now, obviously, what you could do is have it all one big piece, one big, tall, long piece. But for the sake of this video, actually, no. For the sake of the video, I do not have those. So I do not apply them because I don't have them. But obviously, if you do, it's highly recommended that you do use these because it reduces friction on the cylinder walls, and thus the piston will be able to move more freely and with less friction. Now, as an alternative, if you do not have the tall, thin, long pieces, what you can do is you can take a piece of sandpaper and you can grind down the walls, and you can basically make it smoother, as not all Legos are perfect. They're not always the same size, exactly precisely. So what you can do is you can take sandpaper and smooth it down. I'm not sure if you can see, but there's a bit of a grind marks in there. I don't know, you probably can't see, but obviously there is grind marks to make it smoother. Another thing, if you don't have sandpaper, is obviously you can lubricate it too with anything from WD-40 to bike chain lube. Anything will work, really. Valve oil, that works too. An instrument. Anything that has lubricative properties, including silicone, which also I've found works best. So yeah, that's basically what you need to think about for piston and cylinder. One of the most important things of the entire build. So yeah, moving swiftly along, we have the valve, which is up next. And the valve is most definitely the next important thing that you need to think about when you're making a vacuum engine, because it allows the airflow to directly go into the cylinder. It handles all the timings, so it's really important. So what you need to know is the fact that depending on which way your engine spins on vacuum, in this case mine runs clockwise, so it'll spin in this direction to the right. So if it's spin clockwise, what you need to do is have the valve crank exactly 90 degrees offset in the direction that your engine spins. So in this case, if the piston is at bottom dead center, like it is right now, as you can see, and then the valve, you probably cannot see, but the valve crank is 90 degrees offset from that in the direction that the engine spins. So yeah, it always needs to be 90 degrees ahead in the direction that your valve turns. I mean, your piston, sorry. And to show you what I mean, I will open up the valve, or the valve cover, and as you can see, when I turn the engine clockwise, the way that it's supposed to spin, the valve opens just as the piston is starting to go up, which means that the extra suction that starts to flow in will suck the air pressure out of the cylinder, and it will bring the piston up. And then right as it's at top dead center, it'll start closing, and the air pressure will be regained inside the cylinder, and it'll go down. And this cycle repeats very fast. And yeah, so that's basically how a vacuum engine works entirely, but just something to note if you're going to be building a vacuum engine. So yeah, the very last thing that you would need to take into consideration when you're building a vacuum engine is the carb. If you decide to have a carb, it is probably the most complicated part of it because of the fact that you have to align it with the valve, and that can take some precise management, because if you're not careful, the tip of this valve shaft will actually hit the top of it, which is not what you want, because it will affect performance. So not good. It'll actually push the entire top section up, which is not good. You'll lose compression, and the engine won't function properly. So what you need to do is make it carefully and precisely. And basically what a carb does is it regulates the airflow from the vacuum that goes here and into the cylinder here. So as you can see, there is a blockage here, but there is still a tiny bit of hole there, and that is because if you have the valve right up against the wall of this, barely any suction will get through, and it will not idle on 0% throttle. So what this tiny hole does is it allows a little bit of airflow to get in, so that the engine is able to idle properly. Now another thing that you want to do when you're making the valve is make sure that it can open all the way, and that the bottom of the valve is actually aligned with the opening. I mean, the bottom of the carb valve is aligned with the bottom of the air valve here. So basically, when this valve is at top dead center, you want the bottom of this, when it's all the way open, to be aligned with the bottom of the cylinder here. The bottom of the cylinder hole, anyway. So I'm going to take the top off, and I'll show you what I mean. So basically, it's hard to see, but when you open it, it flattens out, and the suction will be able to pass through more easily, thus having more power, and the engine will run faster. Now, I'm going to take some more pieces off, and I'll show you even more of what I mean when I say that it's important that it's lined up. So, as you can see, this is the bottom of the valve hole, and when you open this, see how it's aligned with the very bottom? That means that the hole will actually there'll be less room for the suction to actually spread out and escape, so if it's straight, it will have more power, and yeah, just overall better performance, obviously. So yeah, and another thing is, if you add a big weight here, then it'll close on its own without having to use the suction power of the vacuum to close it. I personally find this better because you don't have to worry about, is my throttle valve open, is my throttle valve closed, I don't know. So if you add a weight here, it'll close faster, which means for snappier throttle, which is always satisfying, if you ask me. And yeah, so guys, I think that's going to be the end of this video. If you did enjoy it, be sure to leave a like. And also, I will be doing more of this content in the future, as well as some tutorials on the things that I build. So yeah, if you leave a comment down below. And yeah, that's about it for this video, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.